Well, thanks. I appreciate being a part of the program and appreciate you guys' time. I'm just going to go through a couple things here by way of an introduction. I'll talk a little bit about who I am and kind of what my background is. And then what do we do as a training group, because we've got sort of a specific focus, and that might help frame up what I'm talking about. And then I'd like to sort of tell you what this presentation's all about. It might be a little bit different than some of the ones that you've heard, but if you were in here for David's presentation earlier this morning at 8, there's a lot of correlation to what he was talking about versus what we're doing in terms of curriculum development. That's really what we want to share with you, is just some of the things that we're discovering as we look at training. It's a pretty exciting time to be in training, and I've been in training for quite a while. Right now I'm the senior manager in charge of the training department for Victor. And I started off in training actually when I was in the Navy for submarines. So I did advanced electronic training there. So I've done technical training, and then I was involved in training in financial services, real one-on-one kind of across the kitchen table training. And then went into technology training at New Horizons, so computers and software. And that brought me to Victor Technologies, where I started off in program management and now run the training department. So that's sort of where I started. Our group, the training department, what we're responsible for is we do the development and distribution and training for our customer-facing employees, which is customer care and our sales guys. We do it for our distributors and for our end users. So when we develop curriculum, we have to think across a pretty broad spectrum. So we don't do sales training per se, but we want to develop curriculum that appeals to all of those audiences, which presents some interesting challenges. So that's what we want to kind of talk about, is what's going on in the training industry from our perspective and how it's really shaping and changing the way that we develop our curriculum, because we've sort of reset and gone back to the basics. And to do that, I'll need to take you inside of Victor a little bit and talk about some of the things that we see. So we use a mastery-based education perspective, but it's mastery-based with a real specific kind of focus, and I'll talk about that here. This is from a book by B. Bloom on educational research, where they took 3 communities and they analyzed those communities and took a look at the results based on standardized tests for how you deliver education. So what they did is the typical lecture format, which for you guys that are in training, you know that that's typically what we still use. It's this, it's standing up, it's sort of lecturing to somebody, and that gets you X result. If you take that same format, but you use a mastery-based approach, meaning they can't move to the next topic until they obtain mastery on the topic that you're teaching, then you get a sigma difference in better results by doing the mastery-based. But then they took individual tutoring, where they had one-on-one tutoring, and they saw another sigma improvement over the results. So that's where the 2 sigma problem comes in, is how do you get the 2 sigma result improvement, right, when you can't really afford to have one-on-one training with every single person that's out there. So to put that in context, what that really means is if you take the regular lecture format, that means if you put a median across a group, 50% are above average, 50% are below. If you could get the results of individual tutoring, that means that 98% of those people would be above average. So imagine if you could teach your students and you could get results where 98% of them were obtaining above average results that they would get in a regular lecture class. And that's really what we're trying to focus on. And we think the opportunity to do that exists now more than it ever has. And we think it exists with utilizing technology and blended learning. But it's not technology by itself. I mean, if we were to look at just technology, the technology's been around for a long time, right? We've got 30 years of technology. 1977, the Apple II came out. That meant the people that were born in 75, by 80, you already saw those computers coming into the classroom. You got Usenet, the World Wide Web came out in 91, video blogs came out, tablets, so you can kind of see the litany of evolution of technology. And what's interesting is that every time one of these new technologies came out, there was somebody that was at the forefront of education that looked at it and recognized the potential of that technology in terms of its impact on education. So they could look at it and go, geez, imagine what you could do with video blogs if you could really leverage it. But for some reason, we've never gotten over that tipping point. That's what I think is unique about where we are today, is we've got an interesting thing happening right now. And you've probably heard these terms, the digital immigrant versus the digital native. So anybody that was born prior to 1975, and that's kind of, this is sort of a loose number, a loose date, but those are people that by 1980, they were in kindergarten, and the computers were already starting to hit schools in kindergarten. So those folks grew up with technology in their educational environment. So if you guys have kids, right, you know that my kids, as an example, have never been in a house that hasn't had technology in it. They've had computers, they've had, you know, smartphones, they've grown up with technology. But you got a whole bunch of people that were born pre-1975 that are the digital immigrants that didn't grow up with it. Now this to me is very intriguing in our particular business, because in the welding industry, right, we deal with a lot of digital immigrants, right? You guys are probably training people that may not even have a computer in their weld shop. Am I right? Okay. What's interesting though is immigrants, just like regular immigrants, you know, you get an immigrant that comes to the United States, some immigrants are so intrigued about the new land that they go everywhere. They search all over the place, right? They want to go to the East Coast, they want to go to the West Coast, they want to go check out everything. Other immigrants come and they sort of want to sit just in their little part of the borough that's a lot like what their homeland was like, and they don't really go anywhere. It's not that much different when it comes to technology. A lot of the digital natives are using technology that was built and designed by the digital immigrants. So what's intriguing from a motivation standpoint is what digital immigrants have is they have an understanding of what it was like before we had technology. So anybody that's ever had to put together a spreadsheet by hand has a massive appreciation of how great Excel is, because they can appreciate what it was like not having it. Likewise with digital natives, what digital natives can do is they're very, very comfortable with the technology. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're better at the technology, but they're used to it. So my daughter is a good example. I would say that she isn't anti-technology, but she's not really into technology. But she can navigate a computer, navigate PowerPoint, Word. She can navigate technology as easily as anybody else, because it's just the tool. It's the pen, paper, pencil that she grew up with. So she's comfortable with that medium, and it's been infused throughout her whole life. So she's comfortable in a learning environment. So digital immigrants, the opportunity is if we can create technology and we can introduce it in an educational form where it's comfortable and we can get them to understand the benefit of it, that's where you can start to motivate people to embrace what is the way that education is going. So let me talk about that a little bit. Here's where we are, and this is why it's so exciting right now. We're in some really fertile ground. I think the reason that technologies have never really taken off until now is because we had never really hit that tipping point. We had never really gotten to the point where there was full saturation. So if you look at this is a breakout from Diffusion of Innovations that just talks about how new innovations tend to absorb into the marketplace. So you get the innovators and the early adopters that jump on board. They're the first ones to get the iPad 3 when it comes out, whatever the latest technology is. But it takes a little while for the late majority to get in. Well, if you look at it, 77 is computers that are first coming out, right? Our digital natives who first were introduced to the Apple II are in their late 20s and early 30s. So we're at the point where we're getting laggards now that are starting to pick up on this technology. And so I see it all the time with the iPad. That's a great example. I've got people that are fairly seasoned who didn't really embrace technology, but now they're adopting the iPad and they're very comfortable with that technology and they're starting to promote it to their peers. So we've hit this point where the bulk of people have technology and utilize technology. And I don't know about you guys, I can't hold a class right now where it doesn't get disrupted by technology. Not necessarily in a bad way. So I do this all the time where I'll ask, and in fact I'll ask here, how many of you have, by a show of hands, how many of you have smartphones? So easily 95%, and that's across the board. So in my classes, 95% of people are utilizing technology that allows them to connect with the cloud, connect with other information. So we should be building education to utilize those tools, okay? This is a report that came out just recently from Cisco, which if you look at I won't go through this in gross detail, but you can just look at some of these stats and you can see it's inevitable. I mean, this thing is just exploding. Average smartphone use tripled in 2011. You got mobile video traffic that's 52% of all the traffic that goes across the internet. By the end of 2012, the number of mobile connected devices will exceed the number of people on Earth. I know in our household, we've probably got 8 or 9 devices that we use that are all mobile connected. There's only 5 of us in the family. 2016 mobile connected tablets will generate almost as much traffic as the entire global mobile network in 2012. The fact of the matter is that this is the way that people communicate. It's the way they access information. And it's the trend that from an education standpoint, we could either ignore it or we can embrace it. And I think we ignore it at our detriment. Here's a couple models of the new frontier, and I know David talked about one of these, Khan Academy. If you want to see the direction that education is going, go check out these 2 sites. Coursera is a site that's sponsored by multiple universities. I think there's, well, I don't know how many, major universities, but they've got over 198 courses that they're offering up on the internet for free. So these are full-blown courses. They're like 6-week courses. You can log on to them. They have testing that they model and they go through. And again, it's all free. And the courses range from biology and life sciences to mathematics and engineering. So it's pretty intriguing. Khan Academy, you saw a little bit about. They've got over 3,400 videos that they do that are on-demand videos you can get across any mobile platform. These are great. If you guys have kids, you got to go to Khan Academy. They have some tools up there, especially if your kids struggle with math. These are awesome tools for math. But beyond that, they've got some turnkey tools that they've made available for educators. So what's intriguing about this isn't necessarily the replacement of the class. It's really truly blending, right, technology and the classroom, unlike we've ever been able to do in the past. And that's what's so exciting about some of these models, Khan Academy in particular. So if you take this concept of leveraging technology, right, using the tools that you have, and you think about it in terms of how you develop your curriculum, it starts to really expand what the possibilities are for how you develop your curriculum. So you've got all these tools, technology-wise and otherwise, that are available. I mean, you got internet, tablets, webinars, you got hands-on labs, instructor-led training, virtual chalkboards. There's just this plethora of pedagogies that you could follow and methodologies that you could use to deliver your content. So what's happening as we've evolved into technology is we've sort of taken old curriculums and we're trying to shoehorn it into this new technology and figure out how do we get the technology to work. I propose we got to scrap the curriculums completely, and we got to rethink how we develop the curriculum. Because when you're thinking about these tools and you're thinking about the delivery mechanisms that you could develop, that's a grassroots type of change in how you would do it, how you would put the curriculum together. So if you take your learning modalities, right, you're all different types of learning styles, mix them with what are some great knowledge testing techniques that are available through technology and available through the regular classroom. What you can do is you can build a real true blended learning experience. So any given topic has a breadth and a depth of the topic that you need to go through. And what I would submit is that we're at a point in time where we've got these great tools that enable us to get some of the rote fact-based sort of general information that you don't get a huge benefit out of by teaching in a lecture format and get it out of the classroom so that you can evolve into mastery-based learning and you can transform your classroom into a true project-based, mentor-based, experiential complex type of learning environment. So it's the difference between I'm using technology to teach you what a painting is, and I'm going to use the classroom to teach you how to paint. Because too much of our instructors and our subject matter experts' valuable time is spent in trying to pump information into your brain, instead of creating an environment where we ignite the brain and we allow the student to sort of create their educational experience, and then we let the instructor be the mentor that helps them do that, right? That helps them learn how to paint and explore that space. And that has dramatic application, I think, in the welding industry. Because there's tons of stuff that we talk about that lecturing about it is probably not the best format. When you could create on-demand videos, you could create, you leverage technology and get that to the student when they're ready for it, because they may not be ready for it when they're sitting in your class for 3 hours, but maybe when they go to bed and they've got an hour to read through and go through some of that information, that's when they're ready for it. So we want to make sure that that content's available for them to get to. What it also does is give us some really, really intriguing capabilities in terms of how we look at the feedback and the data we get. So everybody probably gets feedback forms from classes that you hold. Well, when you start going digital and you start really thinking of this as data, this makes it so you can get real quantifiable information. And I'll give you an example here. This is from Coursera, one of the online computer classes that Coursera has. And they mapped student wrong answers. So each of those X represents a wrong answer from the student base. It's like some 100,000 students that they had globally. So the big X's are larger ones. The big X in the upper left-hand corner represents 2,000 students that gave the same wrong answer to one question. Now, if you think about it, if you're in a class of 100, right, as a student, and you have 2 people that miss a question, you're probably never going to understand it. But if you have 2,000 people, that's a big data point. And what's intriguing about technology is that they were able to dive into this, look at the root cause of what the problem was, or what the root cause of the misunderstanding was, and they were able to create a pop-up message that would come up so that any student going forward, if they went down that sort of line of thinking, it would automatically pop up and tell them, hey, we understand why you go in that direction, but this is how to do it differently, and it could correct on demand, real time. So getting information in this environment allows us to start to mine for information in a way that we never could in the past, and it allows us to analyze and really improve our educational process and make sure that we're doing things that are really, really effective. Does that make sense? So that was the rapid fire look at what's going on at Victor Technologies. We're taking all of these tools and essentially rethinking our curriculum from the ground up, and figuring out what makes sense to put in a technical environment, what makes sense to put out into the classroom, and we're reshaping and rechanging our classroom based on all this information. So, any questions? All right.
Questions, comments?
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.